Welcome to the Thinking Shelf, where we dive deep into the essential principles that can transform your productivity, mindset, and life. In today's episode, hosts Mindy and Dustin are discussing a topic that's more important than ever: why focus matters. Drawing on insights from best-selling books like Deep Work by Cal Newport, Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and The One Thing by Gary Keller, we'll be unpacking powerful strategies that help you prioritize, eliminate distractions, and do what truly matters. Whether you're looking to maximize your productivity or find clarity in a chaotic world, this episode is for you.
Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Looks like you're really interested in upping your output and finding more meaning in your work. Who isn't, right? But how do we even do that? Well, we're diving into Cal Newport's Deep Work, and we're going to be pulling in some ideas from The One Thing too. So in a world overflowing with distractions, how can we train our minds to focus and get work done that really matters?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, technology is amazing and all,
Yeah.
but it also throws distractions at us constantly.
Mhm.
So yeah, focusing and doing quality work is harder than ever.
Totally. Notifications, emails, social media. It's like we've forgotten what focus even feels like. But get this, Cal Newport says that deep work, that ability to concentrate without distractions, it's becoming more and more valuable. And he uses this really interesting example. Have you heard of Nate Silver, the election forecasting guy?
Oh yeah, I know his work.
Well, he started out as a baseball stats geek.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that he was able to take his ability to analyze baseball data and apply it to election forecasting, completely different field.
Yeah, he basically mastered deep work and then moved it to a new area. And he was super successful.
It's like a superpower or something, right? But if it's so valuable, why is it so hard for so many of us? I mean, our brains aren't really wired for staying focused, are they?
Not naturally, no.
Yeah.
We're actually wired for distraction. Think about it. For most of human history, we had to be alert to threats,
Yeah.
and changes in our environment. So it makes sense that our attention is always shifting, looking for anything important.
We're programmed to be distracted, which makes sense back then, but now it's like our brains are working against us.
Yeah, especially when we're trying to do complex stuff, things
Yeah.
that need you to concentrate for a long time.
So every time we switch between tasks, even if it's just to check email quickly or a glance at social media,
We create what's called attention residue.
attention residue.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to bake a cake, but you keep switching recipes.
Okay, I'm with you.
Each switch leaves a little bit of the old recipe in the bowl. You end up with a messy cake.
So even if we think we're good at multitasking, our brains are actually struggling.
Exactly.
Like running too many programs on your computer.
Yes, and that's where Cal Newport's idea of the cult of the internet comes in.
The cult of the internet.
Right? He says, we've developed this blind faith in anything internet-related without stopping to think if it's actually good for us or if it's making us less productive.
Makes sense.
We're always connected, always getting new information. There's pressure to be always on.
I feel that pressure all the time. Even when I know I should be focusing on something specific, I still feel like I need to check my email or scroll through social media. What if I miss something?
It's a common struggle. We've got this idea that busyness equals productivity.
Right.
But just because we're checking things off our to-do list
Yeah.
or answering emails doesn't mean we're actually creating something valuable.
And you know what? Sometimes it feels like people we admire are making it worse. Like Alyssa Rubin, the New York Times journalist. Even she feels this pressure to be on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, even though she knows it's bad for her focus.
Wow.
It's almost like this need to be online all the time. It's working against us.
Yeah, it is. It's really important to step back and think, are we actually benefiting from being connected all the time? Or is it just eating up our time and attention, keeping us from doing that deep work? The kind that leads to real achievement and satisfaction.
We all need to ask ourselves that. So how do we break free from this cult of the internet? How do we develop a more focused approach to work? Where do we even begin?
Well, the good news is that Cal Newport and the authors of The One Thing, they give us some practical strategies. One of the most important things is scheduling time for deep work.
So not just squeezing in moments here and there,
Yeah.
but actually blocking out time.
Exactly like any other important appointment. Cal Newport talks about 4 different philosophies for scheduling deep work: monastic, bimodal rhythmic, and journalistic.
Ooh, okay, let's talk about those. Monastic sounds interesting, but is that realistic for most people?
Oh, it's the most extreme approach.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily about being physically isolated. It's more about creating those long periods of distraction-free concentration.
So more about mindset than location.
Yeah, exactly. Like creating your own monastery in your home or office.
I like that.
A great example is Donald Knuth, the computer scientist.
Yeah.
He disconnects from everything for months at a time when he's writing.
Wow, that's intense. I don't think I could do that. What about the other approaches? Bimodal, rhythmic, journalistic. Are those a little more doable?
Yeah, for sure. Bimodal is about balancing deep work with the rest of life. So you might have certain days or weeks just for deep work.
So it's like switching back and forth.
Exactly. Like Adam Grant, the professor at Wharton, he does all his teaching in one semester. Then the other semester is for deep work.
Interesting. That takes a lot of planning.
It does.
Okay, what about rhythmic?
Rhythmic is about making deep work a daily habit, like scheduling time for exercise or meditation.
So you build it into your routine.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to huge chunks of time. Even 30 minutes or an hour each day can make a difference.
I can see myself doing that. Okay, last one. Journalistic.
Think of a journalist. They have to jump into deep work mode whenever a story breaks, no matter what their schedule is.
So it's about being flexible.
Exactly. It's good for people with unpredictable schedules or who work in fast-paced environments.
Makes sense. So we have 4 different ways to schedule deep work. Monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, and journalistic. The key is to find what works for you. But what about other strategies? Beyond scheduling, I mean. What else can help us cultivate a deeper focus?
Oh, there are tons of tips and tricks,
Uh-huh.
both in deep work and the one thing.
Okay, let's hear them. Because honestly, putting this all into practice, that's the hard part, right?
Absolutely. Understanding deep work is one thing.
Yeah.
But actually making it part of your life.
Yeah.
That takes effort and discipline. And you have to be willing to experiment, to find what works for you. One of the things I really like from deep work is setting up a shutdown ritual. At the end of the day,
A shutdown ritual.
yeah, you know how sometimes you're lying in bed trying to sleep, but you can't stop thinking about work stuff.
Yes. It's like my brain won't shut off.
Psychologists call that the Zeigarnik effect. Basically, our minds get stuck on unfinished tasks. Until we figure out a way to mentally close the loop, those thoughts keep coming back. They mess with our sleep and stop us from really disconnecting from work.
So a shutdown ritual helps with that.
It's all about creating a series of actions, things that tell your brain work is over. Time to switch gears.
Like what kinds of things?
It could be simple things, like reviewing your to-do list, making a plan for tomorrow, maybe tidying up your workspace,
Yeah.
even just taking a few deep breaths, and picturing yourself leaving work behind.
Creating a boundary between work and personal time. I like that. What about managing those digital distractions? Any tips for that?
Definitely. One of the best things you can do is schedule specific times for internet use, and then disconnect completely outside of those times.
Like a digital detox.
Kind of. Cal Newport calls it the Internet Sabbath.
Interesting.
It's about taking back control of your time and attention, instead of letting the internet run your life.
I have to admit, the thought of disconnecting from the internet for a long time, it makes me a little nervous.
I get it. It's hard at first, especially if you're used to being connected all the time, but the benefits are huge. When you disconnect, you create space for deeper thinking, for creativity, for connecting with the people around you.
True. Okay, so we've got the shutdown ritual and the internet Sabbath. What about Roosevelt dashes? Those sound pretty intense.
They can be effective, but they're more for short bursts of focus.
Right. What if you prefer longer, deep work sessions?
Then the key is to create the right conditions for sustained concentration. Find a quiet workspace, get rid of distractions. You could even set a timer to keep yourself on track.
A timer is a good idea.
Yeah, it's like a little challenge for yourself.
What else can help us extend those deep work sessions?
Have you ever tried productive meditation?
Productive meditation.
Yeah, it's not about clearing your mind or anything. It's about using focused thinking to work through problems or to explore ideas.
So you're directing your focus towards a specific goal.
Exactly. You're giving your brain the space and structure it needs to really dig deep.
That's cool. Okay, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, the 80-20 principle. I get that it's about focusing on the most important things, but how do we actually figure out what those are?
That's where the rubber meets the road. The 80-20 principle, or Pareto's principle. It tells us that most of our results come from just a few of our efforts. The trick is to figure out which activities have the biggest impact, and then prioritize those ruthlessly.
Easier said than done.
It does take honesty and self-awareness.
Right.
You have to be willing to admit that some of the things you're spending time on might not be moving you forward.
But once we identify those high-impact activities, How do we make sure we're giving them enough time and energy?
The one thing has a really useful exercise for this. You ask yourself a series of questions. Each one gets more and more focused. You start with something broad, like, what's my one thing right now?
Yeah.
Then you narrow it down. What's the one thing I can do to achieve that one thing? And you keep going until you get to a single actionable task, something you can focus on right now.
I see. It's like peeling back the layers to get to the core of what really matters. And I guess once you know your one thing, it becomes easier to say no to everything else.
Exactly. Saying no is crucial for protecting your time and attention.
But it's so hard.
It is. We don't want to disappoint people or miss out on opportunities.
Right. Any advice on how to say no gracefully?
Both deep work and the one thing offer some helpful tips. One thing you could do is be clear about your priorities and communicate them clearly.
So people understand where you're coming from.
Exactly. When you know what matters most to you, it's easier to turn down requests that don't align with those priorities.
Like, you have a filter for your commitments.
That's a great way to put it.
But how do you actually say no without being rude? I mean,
Deep work suggests some specific phrases, like, I can't do it, but X might be interested. Or, you're welcome to X. I'm willing to Y.
I like
They help you politely decline, while offering alternatives or suggesting someone else who might be a better fit.
It's about being helpful but firm, not just shutting people down.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to recognize that a request, even if it seems important, it doesn't fit with your bigger goals.
Like Michael Lewis. You think he spends hours on social media promoting his books?
Probably not.
He focuses on writing the best possible book, even if it means saying no to other things.
It's about prioritizing what truly matters.
Absolutely. And that courage to say no, it extends to technology too.
Yeah.
We need to set boundaries with email, with social media, with all the digital distractions that want our attention.
We have to take back control.
Exactly.
Yet how?
There are a lot of different strategies. One approach is to set specific times for checking email and social media.
Instead of letting them interrupt you all day.
Right, like creating office hours for your digital life.
I like that. What else?
Deep work suggests using sender filters to limit the number of emails that hit your inbox.
Well, that's a good idea.
You can prioritize messages from certain people or automatically sort emails into different folders.
So you only see the most important stuff.
Right.
That could really help people who feel overwhelmed by email.
Definitely. Remember Tom Cochran, the tech executive?
The one who was spending over an hour on email every day.
Yeah, strategies like sender filters can help you reclaim that time.
It's about being intentional with technology.
Exactly.
And it's about creating an environment that supports deep work, both physically and socially.
Right. You want to be around people who understand the value of deep work. People who respect your need to focus.
So you're saying we need to minimize distractions from other people too?
Yes, our interactions with others can impact our ability to concentrate. You might need to set boundaries with colleagues who interrupt you a lot, or explain to your family and friends that you need some uninterrupted time to work on important projects.
It's about building a network of people who support your deep work habits.
Exactly. Deep work isn't just a personal productivity hack. It's a way of life. It leads to greater fulfillment and meaning.
It's about doing work that we're proud of.
Exactly.
Cal Newport says, deep work is not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
I love that quote.
Me too.
Yeah.
So we've talked about all these strategies for deep work, but I keep thinking about finding meaning in our work. It's not just about being productive, right? It's about feeling like what we do matters.
That's a really important point. And both deep work and the one thing talk about that. Deep work talks about the craftsman mindset.
Craftsman mindset.
Yeah, it's about approaching your work with pride, with craftsmanship, with attention to detail, no matter what the task is.
So it's not about the work itself being meaningful, it's about how we approach it.
Exactly. You can find meaning in any work by focusing on getting better at what you do and striving for excellence.
Like that story about the blacksmith in Deep Work.
Yes, he finds so much satisfaction in shaping metal, even though the end product might be something ordinary.
It's about enjoying the process.
Right, and that connects to what we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
about rest and downtime.
So rest is important for more than just recharging.
It is rest helps us stay connected to our purpose. It makes sure we're not just going through the motions.
And that's where the one thing comes in, with its focus on values.
Right, it's about living intentionally, making choices that support your values and goals, saying no to things that pull you off track.
And realizing that success isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things really well.
Exactly, focusing your energy on what truly matters.
And deep work is a big part of that.
Absolutely. It's about mastering your mind, your skills, pursuing excellence in everything you do, finding joy in the journey, and creating work you're proud of.
Well, I think that's given our listeners a lot to think about. We've covered a lot in this deep dive. Deep work distractions, strategies for focus, and finding fulfillment in our work.
It's been great exploring all this with you.
Before we go, I want to leave everyone with a question.
Okay.
If you had to choose just one thing to focus on deeply for the next month, what would have the biggest impact on your life? What would it be?
That's a good one.
Think about it. Play around with the idea and see how the power of deep work can change things for you.
Wow.
Until next time, happy diving, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to The Thinking Shelf. We hope today's episode gave you some valuable strategies for mastering focus and simplifying your life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay focused, stay intentional, and keep thinking deeply.